I arrived in St John's, Newfoundland, with the purpose of finding Dr Lattin. More precisely, I was looking for his voice. The video he had narrated for the Museum of the Flat Earth was being shown at an art gallery in the city. Having walked down the sloping street towards the long harbour, I went inside a nondescript doorway and entered the gallery. I didn't hear the voice of Dr Lattin, but another voice, telling me the gallery was closed that day for staff training. I wandered back up into the downtown area and paused at 285 Duckworth Street, an imposing classical revival building, which, for most of the 20th century, housed the Newfoundland Museum. I wondered if Dr Lattin had also been here, for in 2016 he had undertaken a tour of North America, much of which was spent on Fogo Island, itself just off the northeast coast of Newfoundland. As I drove west out of St John's, I considered Dr Lattin's interests, which had become more focused on the sciences in recent years. He was much amused to learn the nickname for Newfoundland was simply the Rock. This emerging geological interest was evident from his 2016 trip, where he took a number of photographs of stones, rocks, and glacial erratics. He had also spent time surveying the many attractions of Fogo Island, and undertaking a short hike to Brimstone Head with Dr Iris Taylor, who had conducted much research into the Flat Earth Society of Canada. My journey had now brought me through the town of Gander, and then to the ferry terminal at Farewell. Waiting in line for the MV Veteran, I glanced across the sea and saw an island shrouded in mist. It reminded me of the Vanishing Isle, whose history Dr Lattin had researched in Scotland. Regardless of this phenomenon, I arrived on Fogo Island full of enthusiasm and was welcomed by Kay Burns, director and curator of the Museum of the Flat Earth. Having met Dr Lattin in 2016, he was able to helpfully provide me with a list of places he had visited. At Brimstone Head, I walked up the rocky hillside, itself paved with wooden steps, and paused to consider the view across the headland. There were several signs referencing it as one of the corners of the flat earth. But the origins of this geographical point are somewhat unclear, and may date from as recently as the 1970s. I wondered what significance Dr Lattin had placed on the concept of flatness, as this had been the subject of his last public talk. I was certainly at some kind of edge, but was left to speculate on its physical form during my downhill passage. Away from such concerns, I found myself exploring some of the museums on the island. Most of these sought to preserve a historical stasis from the middle of the 20th century. The Bleak House Museum, for example, had a wide variety of everyday objects and personal effects, arranged in their original setting of a 19th century merchant's house. Inside, I felt the atmosphere less akin to the interpretive displays of a museum and closer to a visual archive of a lost time. I saw boxes of tooth powder, jars of Cross and Blackwell marmalade, and stern portraits of Queen Victoria. Given the number of historical properties on the island, I wondered if Dr Lattin had been so entranced by this historical suspension that he might have opened up his own museum here. The traces I encountered, the small things forgotten, all reminded me of the collections which he had displayed so keenly in previous years. The bit of double yellow line, the numerous 1-pence pieces, and the fragment of burnt toast. Had they all ended up here too? Continuing my own survey of the island, there seemed to be many possibilities opening up. Had Dr. Lattin taken a boat ride to the little Fogo Islands, a delightful archipelago which was still inhabited in the summer? What if he had installed himself as a permanent resident of the Fogo Island Inn, taking his interest in Howard Hughes to its logical conclusion? Might he be the brains behind the delicious ice cream parlour in Jobat's Arm? Such possibilities paled into insignificance when I finally visited the Museum of the Flat Earth. Fortified by the excellent coffee on offer, I viewed a series of flattened globes, a rare specimen of a great auk, as well as photographs of Bartholomew Seeker. Through considering the history of the idea of the flat Earth, I began to realize how little I knew about the history of Western science. Thinking about this in the gift shop, I found all manner of publications to guide me further, including Dr. Lattin's Navigating the Edge. As I flicked through its pages, I wonder where my own investigation would take me next.